Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a Modern Investing on Pod. My name is Sasha Star, and today's guests are Dr. Milan Sombrak. Welcome to the show, Milan.
Delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Jim Eid from Eid Foundation. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Sasha. Great to be here.
And finally, our new guest, Irene Parker. Welcome to the show, Irene.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Great to have you all. So we'll start with question, is it today going to be 25 basic points or 50? Jim, what do you think?
Well, I've been saying for a couple of months that the Fed will act in September and they'll cut it by a quarter, 25 rather than 50, because they've shown a tendency to be behind the times, keeping interest rates too low for too long and then too high for too long. And so I just don't think they're bold enough to go to 50, although I think all the conditions indicate 50 would be appropriate. I don't think the Fed has got what it takes to do it.
Irene, what do you think?
I think because it's an election year, I agree with Jim that they're not going to, that would maybe feel like it was a little bit too drastic and move the market a little bit too much if they cut it a half.
Milan, what are your thoughts?
Well, when interest rates drop, there are winners and losers. The losers are people who lend, the lenders are losers, and savers are losers. But investors are winners. So I'm not sure how important it is what percentage will drop interest rates. Fact is, they will drop. And even though you tell us that on Wednesdays markets go up, they're down today. Interest rates are down. Markets should be going up, but they're not going up today in the short run. In the long run, the U.S. market will be a winner for a very long time. So,
well, in this case, I will take a case of 50 basic points cut because it shows the difference between 25 and 50, how it can affect the economy in a very short run. It's impossible to see. I can't see it really, what's the difference between 25 and 50. But if they decided that it's time to cut, why not to start with 50? Unlikely, I may say, highly unlikely. But at least I have a case.
I do think it's the first of a series of cuts, though. I think that they'll be gradual, but over time, they will add up to be significant.
Yeah. Do you think that they can keep the same rates and not to cut at all?
I can't. The pressure is on them to cut. I don't think that they could withstand it one more month. They've done a good job of withstanding it so far, but I don't think they can keep doing it.
Irene, what do you think?
Well, we've been hearing a lot on the news down here of a shortage in the housing market. And so I think they need to stimulate a little bit, just even if it's psychological value for people to go out and get first-time homes. And, we've got one of our candidates proposing a $25,000 down payment for new home and things like that. So it seems like there's a lot of political play going on right now as well.
And the Fed has been trying to create an artificial recession because the historical way of thinking of how do you combat recession inflation is to require a recession, but we've been trying to hit a soft landing without incurring a recession. And I think the Fed has been trying to create it. And now that they're seeing that the job market is softening and things like that, those are the types of things that will prompt them to actually cut gradually at first, but I think over time, consistently. Because the economy is doing fine if the Fed would just get out of the way and start lowering interest rates.
Interestingly about housing, the average house today is twice as large as the house that all of us grew up in.
That's for sure around here.
Vast majority of people our age grew up in a house which had one bathroom for a mother who was not working, a father, and two children. now we have houses that are twice as large, obviously twice as costly, and that's part of the reason why people are having trouble with housing. The other one is that the regulations are drastic and painful. I mentioned before that when a builder puts a shovel in the ground to start digging, he is already half finished. All
Mhm.
50% getting to the point where he puts a shovel in the ground has to do with regulations and building codes and all those things which can be rationalized.
Well, speaking about in Toronto, they're building now, and not just now, but now for quite a while, a tiny apartments, say 700 square feet, and but they're selling them quite quickly. And you know who are the main buyers? Chinese people.
Yeah.
They love these small apartments. They're buying them. I'm not sure what will be the sale value of these apartments, unless there will be many more Chinese people coming to Canada in near future. So it's um, it's just incredible. So
You know what? The trouble with Chinese workers is with Chinese people is they're not afraid to work. And our children have to compete with that. Our children are not used to working the way the Chinese people work. Now, interestingly, in Toronto, there was a building which was owned by a friend of mine and on the main street, Bloor Street, Yonge Street. And he said the trouble with his property is that it is too large to be a hot dog stand and it is too small to be an apartment building. Well, they built a pencil tower there. Now, Hong Kong is full of pencil towers. A
Mhm.
pencil tower is many floors, and they only have one unit per floor. And this particular building has something like 30 or 40 floor and an elevator, one floor per building. And the top floor is selling for $30 million. Hello,
Wow.
$30 million. Now, it is the prime location in Canada, Bloor and Yonge, prime location in Canada.
Absolutely.
And $30 million they ask you for, somebody will buy it.
Well, the thing about the interest rates is that they do discourage people from taking out mortgages, and if they do come down, it'll be easier for people, especially first-time buyers, to get into the home ownership, which I always say should be your first investment. You should invest in yourself first. But the idea that the Fed is waiting for signs of a economic slowdown. The whole thing about the interest rates rising, they were not due to an overheated economy. So the thinking of the Fed has been backwards from the start. It was a global pandemic that caused a breakdown in our economic distribution system globally. Everybody experienced the inflation. It wasn't the overheated economy. So they've got to change their thinking if they want to treat what's really going on properly. So I don't know if they're capable of doing that. They're stuck in the old patterns of thinking.
Jim, I think it's not only important whether it's 25 or 50 basic points, it's also important the commentaries of Powell,
Absolutely.
how he's going to project. If he will say that this is one of many cuts and every month they're going to review situation, it's one thing. If he will say that, well, we have to be cautious, the data is not supporting further cuts or so on. So it's very, very important thing.
Sasha, I wanted to know what you think about this. I've been reading that the interest rate cuts are going to help the small cap companies more than the big caps. Do you think that's true? I don't know what to think of that. It's like go ahead.
Why would that not equally affect small caps and large caps? Equally positive for the markets.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not taking a stance pro or con. It's just something that I've observed reading that they don't think the Magnificent Seven is going to benefit as much as the smaller caps will, and I don't quite understand that.
Yeah, it could be. Magnificent Seven, actually, they don't need any cuts at all. They can make just as much money as they do all the time
I agree with that.
cuts. And 50%, 50 basics or 25, it's irrelevant because all these companies are awash with billions of dollars in cash. So how it can affect them one way or another?
I think the thinking is that the small caps and especially startups will benefit from reduced interest rates because they have to borrow money in order to start up. And so if they borrow money and pay it back more cheaply, that'll be beneficial to startups. And we need competition. I mean, that's the other thing that will drive prices down. So if we get people
So one positive thing, in my opinion, of cutting down interest rates is that it indeed would allow more competition. Now, of course, a lot of the startups will go down with cut or without cut.
it's true historically.
Yeah, and those who will survive, they will be more competitive. That's also true. But I'm following, there is one index, TNA of small caps. They moved up in the last little while, not significantly, nothing really to write home about, but they moved up. But I really don't see a lot of mileage there, one way or another.
The Magnificent Seven are all about innovation, which is really where we should be now. In the Trump-Harris debate, they both spoke about bringing back manufacturing. And people who are involved in manufacturing, they hate their jobs. They love Fridays, they hate Mondays. And we should be sending manufacturing to China, who are good at it, and we should be focusing on innovation to replace manufacturing, to replace the type of job that people hate.
It's a double-edged sword because once you start outsource to China, and then you're losing your manufacturing capacity, and you're becoming quite dependent on China or any other sources. So it's very, very.
We saw that in COVID. We were unable to manufacture the things that the first responders needed, and the global distribution system had broken down, so we couldn't import them either. So so manufacturing is important to maintain, especially chip manufacturing. So the Biden chip bill was very important legislation to pass. I do think that we've been offshoring our economy, our workers to other places since the 80s. So this is not a recent phenomenon.
Absolutely.
Question for y'all, just really quickly. I was curious because before we started the show, we were talking to Irene, and she was telling us that her daughter is a tattoo artist and making some pretty good money in tattoos and everything. So I was just wondering, how much do we think the young people are paying attention to investment? Because I'm thinking, like, I don't have any kids of my own, but my nephews are or 15 and 16 as of August, and I'm wondering if they're even thinking about investment. And I'm thinking about like the Gen Zs, the Gen X, and I lose track of those different other letters that are out there. But the ones that are like in that 18 to say 35 age range, how much do we think they're paying attention to investment? So, like example, you mentioned, I think that your daughter makes $300 an hour doing her craft and everything. So, is she investing some of that money?
Her husband is a high-end contractor for these very expensive restaurants in New York City that are 20,000 square feet. When we ate at one, Michael Jordan was at the table next to us. So they tend to invest in real estate. And I don't know if I'd agree that everybody hates their manufacturing job. I mean, there were days as a stockbroker I would have rather worked in manufacturing, I think.
Maybe not everybody, Irene. Maybe not everybody, but certainly. Yeah.
Henry Ford was given credit for the assembly line, but the assembly line really was a soul deadening experience. So,
yeah, but it depends on how you're raised too. My grandfather was a coal miner, and that's not the first choice for everyone. But if we think back to Orwell's 1984, there are people that have to be at the higher level and at the lower level. But because of their backgrounds, they tend to work more in real estate. And I've always been a nervous real estate investor and felt comfortable in the stock market. But for some people that are in that line of work, then that's a lot better. Now, Mother's had her influence, so she has her retirement plan and 401k in place. But there's so many people, including me, that I just it sounds too much like work to buy a stock and have to watch it. So, I've owned American funds for so long, and whenever as a stockbroker, everywhere I started was tax deferred because you're already making a 28 to 30% return by protecting people from taxes. So these SEP IRAs, I think when I left, you could stick 6,000 a year in, and then forget about it.
Yes.
And that's, that sometimes I think I'm really not adding much to this show because my investments are like watching paint dry,
No,
but
no.
they've performed so well since 1984.
Well,
You ought to
speaking of
be
speaking
watching our portfolios watch the way we watch grass dry or paint dry. Grass dry, paint dry, and our portfolio should be entirely made up of the U.S. market as a whole rather than picking stocks. Picking stocks, Irene, you've done well, but somebody had to do badly in order for you to do well because it is a given, a mathematical certainty that collectively all brokers will equal the market. Collectively, you did well, somebody did badly, but collectively, as a group, the brokers all equal the market. Now,
hey, Milan, just in that same line, and then I'm gonna turn it back over to Sasha and everything. But in that same line, I had the pleasure yesterday of interviewing a woman that is actually in two very interesting fields because she sells. Jim, you'll enjoy this. She sells luxury real estate in Southern Cal, and everything is making a good living. Jane Dorian, but her other claim to fame is that she is handling the estate of the gentleman that wrote the music for Hello Dolly and all along those lines and everything. So she's actually doing a investment or actually selling an auction. I think it's in October and November of the crypt items, meaning the burial crypts for that particular gentleman. And apparently, if you decide to buy the crypt itself, you can be buried next to Marilyn Monroe on one side and Hugh Hefner on the other side. So it seems to me that that is one of those maybe permanent investments that you can get and everything because there is those kind of investments in that space because as we all know, we hope to live for a long time, but none of us are guaranteed an eternity life and all along those lines. So definitely that's just something that I found interesting because you're talking about the luxury market there in California, and apparently she's doing quite well selling luxury houses off of LA and everything. So you kind of talked about that earlier, Irene. So I'm wondering y'all take on the luxury real estate market because that's what Jane Dorian is involved in as her regular job when she's not handling that estate stuff.
And we were observing that in the Hamptons last week. Well, and coming in from Palm Beach Airport where we had to land, there's an advertisement for a new condo. It's only 21,400,000. So,
Just the,
let's get a couple of them. But what about international? One of the best American funds that I was it was extraordinary was the Capital World Growth and Income. That can shift from anywhere. Now they had a Euro Pacific that was boom or bust, where it had good years and then it had horrible years. But I found that the global investing globally and not just limiting yourself to the U.S. is very important.
you
I think
know,
it's very important that, to find a niche where you can actually succeed and prosper. And basically, speaking of your daughter's success, she has a foundation to go into investment of your choice, whether it's real estate or stocks or whatever she wants to do. But this is the foundation. Now, people who don't have that foundation, they cannot do anything. They cannot invest. They cannot buy anything of
or
so
save.
on. So I think this is very, very important for each one who are listening to us to have their base covered, to have a source of income or a business activity which would allow them then to use proceeds for investments, regardless whether it's stock.
there's a great new way to invest, and it's reasonably new, and it has to do with writing covered calls. Now, previously, you could only write covered calls first thing in the morning, expiry date, same day at the end of the day. You could only do so with SPY uh, once or twice a year. Now you can do it on a daily basis and get a premium income of about $600 or $700 per contract, and do that every day. And so that's what I've been doing every day. First thing in the morning, write a covered call, expiry date the same day, and you can now do that every week. And the income is quite incredible, 6 or 7.
Well, I think that's hyper modern investing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, listen, if it works for you, just keep doing that.
It will work for anybody.
I
It will work
advise it.
for everybody, Sasha. Now, some people are concerned because they're not familiar with the process. Maybe they shouldn't get involved. Yeah.
Well, maybe you can explain what is a covered call.
You sell the right to the buyer to purchase the call that you have sold, and you have received money for it right away. Now, why does the purchaser buy a covered call? He buys a covered call hoping that the market will go up and he will be able to sell it to you for less than he paid for it. Yeah.
Which is why they say that writing covers calls is more conservative than just owning the stock right outright, because you limit your upside potential.
That would be true, Irene. In a rising market, you're better off holding the security than writing cover calls on it. But if you're writing cover calls on a daily basis and the market rises, I say, so what? You're writing this cover call, which gives a premium income of about today $700 or $800 per contract in one day. That's no other place can you get such a source of income.
Willem, but you're aware that if the market during the day will go down,
Yeah.
say 2-3%, I'm not talking about 10% or even 5, but 2-3% is happening quite often. Then the premium that you're receiving is minuscule compared to losses that you will incur.
If you're buying, Sasha, if you're buying the American market as a whole, which we all should be, we shouldn't be picking stocks or timing markets. But if you're buying the American as a whole and it declines, you know that it will return someday. The declines are short term, a week or two, a month, maybe even a year. Long term, the American market will go up. And yes, empires all have 100% failure rate, but the failure of the American market is nowhere near visible yet. So it's liable to continue in our lifetimes on an upward trend with fluctuations. Sometimes it'll be down, other times it'll be up.
I'm very concerned about, and as I said already before, I almost pressed the button to buy S&P 500 and I failed. I couldn't do it because I know that out of 500 stocks, there are only 7. They're talking about Magnificent Seven, which will show incredible results, and its history so far for the last few years. And you have 493 stocks, which are nothing but a ballast on the 7.
You're right about that.
Bring
You're
myself
right about
to do it.
You're right about that, but it doesn't seem to matter in the long run. You shouldn't be picking stocks, picking the American market as a whole. And like I said earlier, empires have 100% failure rate, and the American empire will fail someday, but that's not visible anywhere in sight yet. So yeah, in the long run, investors in the American market will come ahead with fluctuations in your core portfolio.
Well, I also think that you can pick a sector or an interest area for you, something that you can feel confident in. And Irene, I think you've shared before you're into biochemical kind of stocks.
Biotechnology and pharmaceuticals.
And that's not my area of expertise. And but I was ahead of the AI boom. And I still think we're only in the cusp of it, and we're starting to see more and more revenue in these stocks. And I think, I go by, do you have a history of revenue and is it increasing? That's a good stock to me. And I know this area and I feel comfortable investing in it. So although I don't have any problem with somebody doing what Milan suggests, is if they don't want to worry about it, if they don't want to pay attention to it. But, I enjoy checking on my stocks every day.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you enjoy it, you should be doing it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what Irene mentioned that your daughter is doing
Tattoo design.
Tattoo design. Nobody was doing tattoos 10 or 15 years ago. Now everybody's got.
She started in let's see, she's 50. I'm dating myself. She's 53 years old, and we dropped her off when she was 19 at Parsons. The CEO of Airbnb, Brian Chesney, I think, flew her home early from her London convention so he could personally launch her Airbnb experience. So she's kind of an elite. She's a curator of, well, now that I can shamelessly promote her work, she's the curator of the Daredevil Tattoo Museum. They have Thomas Edison's first repeating pen. She had to take 45 minutes off because she's being interviewed by a radio station. She's been on CNN several times, and Whoopi Goldberg. She tattooed Whoopi Goldberg, Joan Jett. Name dropping here.
Yeah. That's impressive.
You just don't know how your kids are going to turn out, but she's very good with money, I will say that. And they bought their storefront, and because in New York, if your rent can double overnight, I mean, it is just ridiculous. So they about 5 years ago invested in the storefront in Chinatown.
Did you say that she's 50 years old?
53.
53. You hardly look 53 yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Flattery will get you everywhere.
Exactly.
Well, I think, Malonga, you're right. When I was growing up, tattooing was very rare, and now
you were growing up.
You were radical if you got a tattoo. Yeah. Now you're radical if you don't have a tattoo, right. Which I have none.
None.
Well, your daughter should take a good care of yourself. Actually. Well, listen, we are now about half an hour before the announcements from the Feds, and then comments from the chairman, and we'll see how the markets will react. So from 2 o'clock on, I think we will be glued to our TV sets to see.
Some of us will be glued to our TV sets.
Sure. No, it's an entertainment value for sure to see how the market will start gyrating back and forth. It will go, the Dow Jones will go 200 points up. The next second, 300 down, then another 500 up or so on. I love this entertainment, and I like to watch that.
Talking about being glued to our sets, all of us will be watching the vice presidential debate on the 1st of October, I think it is.
October 1st. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. That will be an interesting event.
We'll all be glued to our sets. And Harris made Trump look very badly on their debate. How will the vice presidential debate turn out? Will the vice? Yeah.
Vance is a very educated man, and it's just that he says some incredibly stupid things. I don't know if he will say something as offensive as he has been doing, but that's one thing that could happen. I don't think Walz will say anything stupid. So there's danger on Vance's part, but I think he's going to be very good as a debater, generally speaking. But I think, the idea of the vice presidential debate moving the needle very much, I don't think that's true. I do think that people have to find out more about Harris. But I also would say in an election that's coming up so soon, the market gets jittery. So I sold some stocks in early August to just increase my cash position a little bit, because I don't like the September and October months before an election as far as putting cash into it.
Absolutely, that's really good decision.
Well, there's a perpetual excuse for not wanting to invest. And, as a stockbroker trying to encourage people to invest, it was either like, oh, I can't invest in October because the market always goes down. I can't invest now because we have to wait till after the election. We have to wait until after the first of the year because when we had the year 2000, no one wanted to invest in when it went from 1999 to 2000. Everybody thought the world would end, right?
That's right.
Would fail. Whether the president is a Democrat or a Republican makes no difference to the market.
No, in the market. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, then there's another saying, sell in May and go away. That's also been true in the last many years.
We would
Well,
say buy SPY and go away all year long.
and sell covered calls every day.
Not covered call, yeah.
Okay,
But as I want to just remind Milan, though, it's not just about stocks. You grow your money, then you have to take the money out, and it's harder taking the money out than it is growing it. So you've got to look at the bigger picture with stocks and bonds and real estate, and don't forget your estate planning. Very important.
No, true. That's true, Irene. And a lot of people have made a lot of money without ever being in the stock market. Interestingly, I'm a amateur violin player. I've been at it for 80 years or so. I'm not getting any better. But violin bows have appreciated incredibly. A music dealer can sell a violin bow for the price of a Steinway grand piano, 2 Steinway grand pianos. Now, if you were dealing with this, would you rather have a 63-gram bow or 2 Steinway grand pianos, which weigh tons?
Well, no, you need a Pleyel piano because that's a far superior piano to Steinway. The worst thing moving here was I moved my Pleyel from Michigan to Florida to Florida to Florida, 6'7" grand from here to there. So now the biggest thing, my little Yamaha over here, which I used to work for Yamaha, selling Yamaha pianos, and I think that's a good stock to consider as well. They also make motorcycles.
The piano looks good even if nobody plays it. I've seen grand pianos turned into bars. Lift up the lid and there's your whiskey and bourbon.
Yeah.
That's what my exercise bike is. It's a clothes hanger now.
Well, I think at that moment, I would like to conclude our program for today. Thank you very, very much for participating. And now let's go to our television sets and watch what's going to happen in the market. Good luck, everybody, and see you same place, same time next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.